Welcome to the Greenlight Investor for the week ending May 8th, 2015. The goal of the Greenlight Investor is to provide a resource to make managing your 401k both a simple and easy process. We do this by using red, green, and yellow cells in the worksheet to help you decide when to buy, what to buy, and when to sell. This presentation is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as personal investment advice. The examples shown are exactly that. They're examples of how you can use this worksheet to help make investment choices within your 401k. Please make sure you refer to your own investment policy and make sure that the choices you choose are appropriate for your investment time horizon, as well as your understanding and acceptance of taking risks in the markets. If you need to pause this for a second to read either of these disclaimers, please go ahead and do so. All right, let's go ahead and go right into our worksheet. Each week we update this worksheet and we'll show the investment choices available to you on the left side. The column headers are the fund number, the symbol for each fund, the fund name, and a description of the fund. At the top of the list, we start out with our core investments. Those are the index funds that are available to you, and they're a great place to start when you're building out a portfolio. Below that are the satellite investments. Those start out with the money market funds and progress down from conservative to more aggressive, showing the fixed income funds next, U.S. growth and income funds, the U.S. equity funds, the international funds, and at the bottom of the list are the sector funds available to you. In the center section of the worksheet, we update the performance of the funds each week. We show the closing price, the month-to-date total return, the quarter-to-date total return, and the year-to-date total return. This is important so you can keep track of how your choices are doing relative to your goals, as well as comparing your choices with other choices within the different asset allocation categories. And finally, we'll come to what I think is the most important part of this worksheet. It's the current weekly trends. Most important column is the relative strength trend change column, which is column V. We use that as the center of the worksheet in the relative strength area. On each side of it, we'll show the long-term performance, which is the most important column to look at when making your investment choices. Column V will show the week-over-week relative strength trend change, and then the column to the right will show the relative strength trend score. In these columns, if the trend is showing generally negative, the cell will be red and you'll see a negative number in the cell. If the trend is generally positive, you'll see a green cell and you'll see a positive number in the cell. In this example, we'll see that from April 24th to May 1st, we had a yellow light flashing as we were just getting ready to switch from the green to the red. So the relative strength changed from a generally upward trend to a downward trend. The other thing that's nice about relative strength is that as you scroll down the columns, you'll be able to see whether the market's showing signs of strength or signs of weakness. When you see a large number of red cells, as you do here, on both sides of column V, you'll see that the market's generally performing fairly weakly. Here you'll see that it's been green, but you're starting to see some red show up, so the market's stalling out, and this shows up in the short-term column that's starting to slow down, although that hasn't been enough momentum to change the long-term trend. As we scroll down, we'll see that the U.S. equity funds are starting to show more and more red, and that's a sign that the U.S. equity markets may be stalling or weakening a bit. We'll also see that there's an increased number of red bearish cells in the short-term column, although generally the longer term is still showing a positive bullish trend. As we scroll down, you can see that we're just seeing a couple of red lights appear in the international funds, but they're generally green. If you look at the numerical values within these cells, though, you'll see that week over week, the majority of these funds are starting to weaken. So again, that's a further sign that this market may be stalling a bit. To the left side of column V, we're seeing just a little bit of change to neutral and bearish with the yellow and red signs. The intermediate and long-term trend, which is positive as shown by the green lights, is still intact. And the last sector, the sector funds, the last category we have for the allocations, are showing that the short term is neutral to bearish, showing a red downtrend starting to develop in most of the funds. We're seeing the intermediate is mixed with green and red, and the long term is starting to show a little bit of a turnover from bullish to a couple of yellow lights and a red light. So that's how we can use that to quickly see how strong the market is, and also spot if there's a change from strength to weakness or from weakness to strength. And you can use that by seeing the change in the colors. And finally, let's see how we can actually use this information to help you make decisions within your 401k. Let's go ahead and highlight the view. Then under custom views, if you highlight that, we'll go to my current allocation. And this is where you can set up your asset allocation and see if there's any red, green, or yellow lights showing next to your allocations that would require some sort of action to be taken. Let's go ahead and open this up. All right, let's scroll down, and here we have highlighted our My Selections, and this is a hypothetical example of how you can allocate assets within your 401k, as well as monitor how they're doing. Our current asset allocation shows that we have a target allocation of 100% invested, and our current allocation is also showing that we have 100%. For our index fund, we have a target of 10%, and in the yellow cell, we're showing that we currently have 10%, and that's highlighted right here with our 10% allocation to the total market index fund. As we scroll down the allocation sheet, we'll see that we have a 10% allocation to the money market, and that's currently showing 15%. Last week we had red cells, and that caused us to move some of our allocation from fixed income over to the money market until we saw some green cells start to appear. As we scroll down, we'll see we have a 5% allocation to growth and income. We have a 30% target allocation to the U.S. equity funds. And you'll see that we have a 20% allocation in the Vanguard Growth Index and a 10% in the Prime Cap fund. Our international allocation shows a 30% target, and we currently have 30% invested. 20% is in the Global Equity Fund, and 10% is in the Vanguard Pacific Index. Our sector fund allocation has a 10% allocation, and that's divided between the T. Rowe Price Financial Service Fund and the T. Rowe Price Science and Technology Fund. So let's scroll back up to the top and see how we can use the red, green, and yellow cells to make a quick decision as to any action that may be needed for the week. Let's scroll this over so you can compare your allocation with the short, intermediate, and especially the long-term trends of your funds. And we'll also want to compare with column W, which is the relative strength for each of the funds. We'll want to make sure that we're in a green or a yellow cell. So our first target here is the 10% allocation we have to the index fund. We can see real quickly that for the year we have a 2.46% return. The short term is neutral, the intermediate term is bearish, but our most important column is the long term. That's still bullish, and the column to the right of V is still bullish, so there's nothing to do. Next we'll go down to our money market, which is always yellow. That's a neutral fund. So we'll leave that there unless we see something to allocate to. Here we have a 5% allocation, but currently we have all yellow and red, and we have a lot of red to the right side. So we elected last week to move out of this until we start to see more green appear. Next we go to the growth in income. Here we have a 5% allocation, and we're seeing that the return for the year is a 1.71. We're showing the short term is bearish, the intermediate term is bearish, but the long term is still bullish. So you could use this as an early warning sign if you're concerned about the market. You could move over to money market with this. Or if we're still seeing the bullish and bullish, it would certainly be prudent to go ahead and stay the course with your allocation to this category. Next will be our 30% allocation to the U.S. equity funds. Let's scroll down and see how they're allocated. We have a 3.69% return so far in this fund. It's showing a bearish and bearish return so far in the short and intermediate term. The long term is still bullish, and the relative strength on a week over week basis is still bullish, but we're seeing that for the last couple of weeks that's also started to move. So again, that's an early warning sign, but there's normal movement that this tracks in the market. When you see these turn yellow or red, at that point you could make certain actionable items ready to go. Next, let's go down to our 10% allocation. Here we're showing green, green, green. It's this one with the lower relative strength scores. Even though they're coming down, they haven't been extremely aggressive, so it's a relatively stable fund. You can see by the stability of the numbers. With 3 green lights and a green light to the right, there's nothing to do with this allocation for the week. Our international funds, we have a 30% allocation to. Here we're seeing that we have a 20% allocation. The return for the year has been 4.81. We've got 3 green lights and a green light to the right, so nothing to do on this one. And our last fund, we have a 10% allocation. It's up 11.21% for the year. It's showing a little bit of weakness in the short term, but the intermediate and long term are still intact. So again, there's nothing to do, especially since we see that the green lights are still showing to the right of column V. And finally, we have a 10% allocation to our sector funds. And here we're seeing that we have a 3.24% return, 3 green lights and a green light to the right of column V, so nothing to do. And our last allocation is a 5% allocation. We have a 5.88% return for the year. We're showing a neutral, a bullish, and a neutral sign. So with green and yellow, it would be your choice. If you see a better fund, you could switch over to it. For me, I'm comfortable. I would just leave this alone, nothing to do, especially since we're showing a green light to the right of column V. That's all there is to managing your allocations each week. That's what I've got for the week. I hope this has been helpful. And I hope it gives you some ideas on how you can use this worksheet to make simple and easy choices for the funds that you should be invested in within your 401k. If you have questions or would like additional information on how you can use this worksheet to allocate assets within your own 401k selections, you can visit our website at thegreenlightinvestor.org, or you could send me an email and I'd be happy to go over this either via email, telephone, or whatever is convenient for you, and we could set up a personal session so that we could go over the worksheet and set it up so that you'd be able to use it to manage your 401k. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have a great Mother's Day weekend. Thank you.